The room goes quiet the second the word order hits the air. Not suggestion, not request, order. Jenny freezes because in that moment she stops being a wife and turns into a resident with rules. The tone shifts fast. Concern flips into command. Love gets replaced by authority. You can see it on her face. The slow understanding that this house does not see her as an equal adult, only someone who needs managing. Her age stops mattering. Her sacrifices stop mattering. All that matters is obedience. This is not about dizziness or food or sitting down for a minute. This is about control dressed up as care. When someone tells you to relax while tightening the grip, alarm bells should ring. Jenny thought marriage meant partnership. Instead, she walked into a family system where patience is demanded from one side only. Every soft word hides a harder rule underneath. And this is where the story stops feeling uncomfortable and starts feeling dangerous. Because once an order gets spoken out loud, there is no confusion left. You are either free or you are managed. And the question hanging in the air is simple and brutal. If love turns into orders, what exactly is Jenny fighting to stay for? Jenny and Sumit did not land here overnight. This move came after years of delays, promises, and long talks where everyone nodded and smiled. Living with Sumit's parents was sold as temporary, a short stay, a respectful pause before adult life resumed. The pitch sounded calm. Family time, bonding, learning routines, then freedom. You know the story. Stay patient now. Enjoy peace later. Jenny believed harmony lived inside effort. Sumit believed time softened everyone. His parents believed proximity created obedience. 3 beliefs walked into one house and none planned to leave quietly. The plan said a few weeks. Reality laughed and locked the door. At first, everyone tried. Polite smiles, shared meals, careful language. Jenny joked through tension because humor felt safer than conflict. A grown woman tiptoeing around rules about food, sleep, and space starts sounding absurd until absurd turns heavy. Living room comfort vanished. Privacy shrank. Freedom turned into permission slips. The promise stayed alive, though. Just hang on. Things settle. Parents relax. Walls soften. That promise kept Jenny steady longer than logic allowed. The dread crept in quietly. Small corrections, soft reminders, gentle guidance with sharp edges. The kind where someone says relax while tightening control. This was sold as family harmony. But harmony only flows when everyone holds equal power. Jenny wanted partnership. Sumit wanted peace. His parents wanted order. Those goals never matched. Yet everyone pretended alignment existed. The apartment waited like a memory of independence. Happy days, quiet nights, no rules about breathing. The longer the stay stretched, the louder the question grew. How long does temporary last before temporary turns permanent? Jenny's body speaks before anyone else does. The dizziness hits and the room snaps into action. Sit down. Eat this. Don't move. Don't argue. On the surface, this looks like care. On the surface, this looks kind. But bodies often react when words stay trapped. Stress leaks out somewhere. And for Jenny, it leaks out physically. Watch how fast concern turns. Into instruction. Sitting becomes required. Food becomes non-negotiable. Even the way she places her feet gets corrected. None of this is shouted. That makes it sharper. Control does not always raise its voice. Sometimes it smiles and says, relax. The food moment matters more than people admit. Jenny asks a simple thing. If we're sick, you would make me eat this, right? She's not asking about soup. She's asking about choice, and the answer floats in the air without being spoken. Yes, you eat what we give you. Yes, care comes with rules. Yes, your body belongs to the system once concern gets involved. Caretaking becomes leverage when consent disappears. The psychology is quiet but heavy. If you accept help, you accept authority. If you resist, you look ungrateful. That trap closes fast. Jenny tries to stay polite. She tries to stay calm. Her body already decided the truth before her mouth catches up. This is how control survives in families. No villains, no yelling, just a steady stream of small instructions that erase independence piece by piece. The person giving orders believes they're helping. The person receiving them starts shrinking. And this is the moment viewers start feeling uneasy because care should not feel like confinement. Jenny is not collapsing. She is reacting. Her body is waving a flag. Her voice has not fully raised yet. And once your body starts protesting, you're distressed off camera, struggling with feelings of invisibility and control. One of the most telling signs came when Jenny began using language that went beyond emotional hurt. In later interviews and private conversations, she reportedly described her role in the household as servant-like. She spoke about being expected to clean, cook, and remain silent while decisions about her life were made around her again. These are allegations, not established facts. But what matters is how consistently they appear over time. When a single complaint repeats across seasons, formats, and contexts, it stops being a moment and starts becoming a narrative. What complicates this further is Sumit's position in the middle. On camera, he often appeared torn, pleading with his parents while trying to comfort Jenny. But off camera, sources say his indecision played a role in allowing tensions to escalate. By refusing to fully confront either side, Sumit may have unintentionally enabled a dynamic where Jenny felt powerless and unheard. And while viewers often criticized him for being passive, few realized how serious the consequences of that passivity were becoming behind the scenes. Because indecision does not stay neutral for long. It slowly starts taking sides without announcing it. And in this case, silence kept reinforcing the same structure that was already suffocating Jenny. Every moment he chose to calm things instead of confronting them, the message became clearer. Stability mattered more than fairness. Peace mattered more than truth. And Jenny could feel that shift without anyone needing to say it out loud. The house had rules, but more importantly, it had an invisible hierarchy. And Jenny was not at the top of it. She was not even standing on equal ground. She was adjusting, adapting, shrinking herself to fit into expectations that were never designed for her comfort in the first place. That realization does not hit all at once. It builds slowly, through repetition. The same corrections, the same instructions, the same feeling of being watched, evaluated, and quietly judged. Over time, it stops feeling like a temporary situation and starts feeling like a permanent role. And once that thought enters your mind, it changes everything. Because now you are no longer waiting for things to improve. You are questioning why they have not. And more importantly, whether they ever will. The emotional weight of that question is heavy. It sits with you during quiet moments. It follows you into conversations. It shapes how you respond even when you are trying to stay calm. Jenny's reactions begin to shift in subtle ways. She still tries to keep the peace, but there is a growing tension underneath. A hesitation before agreeing. A pause before complying. Small signs that her internal resistance is building, even if she is not fully expressing it yet. And this is where things become even more complicated. Because when one person starts waking up to a dynamic, the system around them often pushes back harder. Not always loudly, not always aggressively, but consistently. The expectations become firmer. The corrections become more frequent. The space for independence becomes smaller. It is not always intentional. Sometimes it is just the system trying to preserve itself. But the effect is the same. Jenny feels it. The pressure to conform. The pressure to not disrupt the balance. The pressure to accept things as they are, even when they do not feel right. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Systems like this do not rely on force alone. They rely on cooperation. They rely on the idea that it is easier to go along than to push back. That resistance creates conflict, and conflict is something most people try to avoid. Especially in a family setting where respect and harmony are constantly emphasized. Jenny knows that. She understands the cultural weight behind it. She understands that pushing too hard could break things in ways that cannot be repaired. But at the same time, staying silent is breaking something inside her. And that internal conflict is where the real struggle lives. Not in the loud arguments, but in the quiet moments where she has to choose between speaking up and keeping the peace. Between asserting herself and maintaining the fragile balance of the household. Sumit stands in the middle of this, but being in the middle is not the same as being neutral. Because every time he delays a decision, every time he avoids taking a firm stance, the situation drifts further in one direction. And that direction is not toward equality. It is toward control. He tells himself he is protecting everyone. He tells himself he is buying time. But time is not solving anything here. It is only making the lines clearer. Jenny begins to see that. The promises that once felt reassuring now feel distant. The idea of moving out, of having their own space, starts to feel less like a plan and more like a possibility that may never come. And when hope starts fading, Reality becomes harder to ignore. The house is not changing. The expectations are not softening. And her position within this structure is not improving. That awareness brings a different kind of clarity. Not the kind that feels empowering, but the kind that forces you to confront difficult truths. Jenny starts asking herself questions she avoided before. What does staying here actually mean for her? What is she holding on to? And most importantly, what is she giving up in the process? Because every day spent in this environment comes with a cost. Not always visible, not always dramatic, but real. It shows up in her body, in her mood, in the way she carries herself. The lightness she once had begins to fade. The humor becomes less frequent. The patience starts wearing thin. And even when she tries to hold on to positivity, it feels forced. Like something she is doing out of habit rather than belief. The people around her may not fully see it, or maybe they choose not to. But the change is there. And once it reaches a certain point, it cannot be undone. Because this is no longer about adjusting to a new environment. This is about losing parts of yourself to fit into it. And that is not something that can continue indefinitely without consequences. The tension builds quietly, but it builds steadily. Each interaction adds a little more weight. Each unspoken frustration adds another layer. And eventually, something has to give. The question is not if, but when. And when that moment comes, it will not be about one argument or one disagreement. It will be about everything that has been building underneath for far too long. Because no one can live in a space where they feel controlled and unheard without reaching a breaking point. And Jenny is getting closer to that point with every passing day. The signs are there. In her expressions, in her tone, in the way she responds to situations that once seemed manageable. She is no longer just adapting. She is enduring. And endurance has limits. The house may still look calm on the surface. The routines may still be followed. The conversations may still sound polite. But underneath all of that, something is shifting. Something is reaching its edge. And when it finally crosses that line, the outcome will not be small. It will not be contained. It will change everything. Because once someone fully realizes they are being controlled, they cannot unsee it. And once that realization turns into action, there is no going back to the way things were before. Because awareness changes behavior, even when someone is trying to hold everything together. Jenny is no longer just reacting to situations. She is observing them. Watching patterns. Noticing how every moment of care comes with an expectation attached. Every act of kindness quietly asks for compliance in return. And once you start seeing that pattern, it becomes impossible to ignore. The same words sound different. The same gestures feel heavier. What once looked like support now feels conditional. And that shift creates distance, not just emotionally but mentally. Jenny begins pulling back in ways that are not obvious at first. She speaks less, agrees faster, avoids eye contact during moments that feel too controlling. Not because she accepts the situation, but because she is conserving energy. Because fighting every small battle starts to feel exhausting. And this is where things get even more dangerous. Not louder, not more dramatic, but quieter. More controlled on the surface, but more fractured underneath. Because silence in a situation like this is not peace. It is pressure building without release. Sumit notices changes, but he does not fully understand them. He sees the distance, the reduced reactions, the way Jenny no longer pushes back the same way she used to. And instead of recognizing it as withdrawal, he reads it as adjustment. As progress. He tells himself things are getting better because the conflicts are less visible. But less visible does not mean resolved. It often means suppressed. And suppression has a cost. It stores everything for later. Every ignored feeling. Every dismissed concern. Every moment where Jenny chose not to speak up. All of it stays. And over time, it turns into something heavier than frustration. Turns into resentment. Not loud, explosive resentment, but quiet, steady resentment that changes how you feel about everything around you. Jenny starts questioning not just the situation, but the choices that led her there. The years she invested. The compromises she made. The belief that love would be enough to build a balanced life. And those questions do not come with easy answers. Because admitting that something is not working after investing so much into it feels like loss. It feels like failure, even when it is not. And that emotional weight makes every decision harder. Leaving is not simple. Staying is not peaceful. And being stuck between those two realities creates a kind of tension that slowly wears a person down. Meanwhile, the household continues operating as it always has. The routines stay the same. The expectations remain unchanged. And from the outside, everything still looks stable. That is the illusion that makes situations like this so difficult to address. Because nothing looks obviously broken. There are no constant arguments. No dramatic confrontations. Just a steady pattern that quietly limits one person's freedom. And because it is subtle, it is easy to dismiss. Easy to justify. Easy to explain away as culture, as tradition, as family structure. But Jenny feels the difference. She lives it every day. The lack of privacy. The constant awareness that her actions are being noticed. The unspoken rules about what is acceptable and what is not. These things add up. They shape how she moves, how she speaks, how she exists within that space. And over time, they start to define her role in a way that feels smaller than who she is. The idea of independence begins to shift from a shared goal to a personal necessity. Not something she hopes for in the future, but something she needs in order to feel like herself again. And that need grows stronger with each passing day. The apartment they once talked about stops being just a plan. It becomes a symbol. A symbol of space. Of control over her own routine. Of waking up without feeling monitored. Of making choices without needing approval. That vision becomes clearer in her mind, even if it feels further away in reality. Sumit still talks about timing. About patience. About not upsetting his parents. And while those concerns are real, they no longer hold the same weight for Jenny. Because her reality is immediate. It is not about future harmony. It is about present discomfort. And that difference in perspective creates a gap between them that keeps widening. Conversations that once felt hopeful now feel repetitive. Circular. Going over the same points without moving forward. Jenny starts hearing promises as delays. Reassurances as avoidance. And that shift changes how she listens, how she responds, how she trusts what is being said. The emotional connection between them begins to strain under that pressure. Not because the love disappears, but because it gets buried under unresolved issues. Under unmet needs. Under the constant feeling that one person is adapting more than the other. And relationships cannot stay balanced when the effort is one-sided. Eventually, that imbalance demands attention. It forces a moment where things can no longer continue as they are. And that moment does not always come as a dramatic explosion. Sometimes it comes as a quiet decision. A line drawn internally before it is ever spoken out loud. Jenny is getting closer to that line. You can see it in the way she processes situations now. Less emotional reaction, more observation. Less immediate response, more delayed reflection. She is thinking ahead, considering outcomes, weighing what staying really means for her future. And that kind of thinking leads to change, whether gradual or sudden. Because once someone starts evaluating their environment instead of just surviving in it, they begin to see options they ignored before. Options that were always there, but felt too difficult to consider. Now they feel necessary. The fear of conflict starts competing with the fear of losing herself. And at some point, one of those fears becomes stronger than the other. When that happens, action follows. And when action follows awareness, it does not ask for permission. It does not wait for the perfect moment. It simply moves. The only question left is how that movement will look. Will it be a conversation that finally shifts everything? Or a decision made quietly that changes the direction entirely? Either way, the current balance cannot hold forever. Because it was never truly balanced to begin with. It was maintained. Carefully, consistently, but not equally. And anything built on that kind of imbalance eventually reaches a breaking point. Jenny feels that point getting closer. Not as a sudden realization, but as a steady certainty that something has to change. And once that certainty settles in, it becomes stronger than doubt, stronger than fear, stronger than the need to keep everyone else comfortable. Because at the end of the day, there is one truth that cannot be ignored anymore. Living in peace should not require giving up control over your own life. And Jenny is no longer willing to pretend that it does. That shift alone changes everything, even before she says a single word out loud. Because once someone stops pretending, their energy changes. The way they listen changes. The way they respond changes. And most importantly, the way they tolerate things starts to disappear. Jenny